All right, folks, thank you for tuning in to the Bucks of America podcast, the cooking edition. My guest tonight is Brandon Waddell. He is the man, the myth, the legend behind the Mountain Archery Fest. Thank you for tuning in from Wednesday's episode. So this episode, I have no idea what Brandon has up his sleeve, but I am definitely excited about it because, as everybody knows, I like to eat and I like to post a lot of my food on Instagram and Facebook Reels and stuff, so you can find all my recipes. So I'm actually just going to turn the mic over to Brandon and let him talk about his recipe.
Well, let's see. You were going to give me a cut of meat. What kind of meat are we working with here, or do I get to choose?
You get to choose. The guests always get to choose because this is something that you get to share with your friends and your family that you find very appreciative to share. Like some people like to share mountain lion or goat or speed goat, something that you like spreading that love that your cup is so overfilled. You like to show everybody and bring people to the table.
Sounds good. I got a little bit of background in cooking. I was actually a chef for 15 years prior to becoming a trucker. So I've got a lot of background there working for a one-star Michelin chef for a little while. And within that time frame, I was able to learn a ton about butchering meat. And so that was something that really helped my success in the field when I became a wild game hunter. I have a killer walk-in. I have a killer butcher kind of section in my walk-in, and that's something that I take a lot of pride in. Is first off is just my meat care from the field all the way to the plate. I'm extremely anal, if you will. Even I take a lot of pride in that part of the process, and it means a lot to me seeing that finished product come to fruition, especially when you're creating dishes that are sometimes for people who are not wild game eaters, right? So for me, this started many years ago. I started something with my nephew, Jacob Gonzalez. We kind of came together. He was really interested in learning how to cook. And so I gave him his first book called La Repertoire, which is a Bible of sauces and things and soups and things that really kind of help you understand the science of food and the creation of the things you need to do. So for me, like a little bit of a review, we used to cook. We started with about 10 to 20 people, and then quickly this became 60 to 100 people. And we were then turning around and looking for people to give us meat, so that we could actually pull this all off. I'll give you a quick rundown of one of our shot caught and trapped barbecue menus. Okay. And then maybe you can ask me if there's one in there that you want to know. Okay, so smoked elk butt with cherry almond Cabernet sauce, venison in adobo with apricot chili chutney, which is one of my personal favorites, bear brats with chipotle mustard, Oaxacan caribou with onions and bell peppers, moose red chili enchiladas, smoked bear ham and beans with saffron coriander goat cheese, smoked venison green chili pozole, Cajun boil with crawdads and elk summer sausage, fresh caught yellowtail ceviche, fresh caught grilled halibut with seared pineapple salsa, sheep chorizo tacos, tequila lime mountain goat tacos. And then I did have someone who was extremely allergic to most spices, so we did just a simple grilled elk T-bone with fresh apricots and a vegetable kebab. So one thing I did leave out of there, I had, we did a couple others in there. We did elk meatballs with sun-dried tomato marinara, tom kha soup with grouse and rabbit, spicy gluten-free duck fried rice, smoked bear pozole with green chili, bear ham with pineapple spice glaze, grilled elk loin with tomatillo sauce, herb-crusted venison with horseradish sauce, braised wild boar and red wine sauce with grilled polenta, and wild duck dusted in chocolate with port-soaked cherries and roasted root vegetables.
Holy cow.
Now, one that I left off of there that I've actually have a recipe that's been published in the Wilderness Attitude Cookbook is a coffee-spiced bear loin with a Coca-Cola glaze. That's an interesting one. that kind of puts a spin on a few things. But
So the two that really caught my eye, because one, nobody's ever talked about bear, and two, nobody's ever talked about caribou. So which one you want to start first and finish with, that's up to you. But I want to know more about these but that bear with coffee sounds intriguing.
So the bear with coffee is it's a pretty simple recipe, and I can get you a full listed recipe for you to throw in. I can kind of describe it. I don't have it recited off my memory. But I can get it to you listed so that you can throw it up with the podcast and the show notes. But the premise around the bear loin is to create a really robust, savory meat, and then finish it with something that has some life and sweetness to kind of counteract that a little bit.
Okay.
So for the most part, I take a bear loin. I hang my bear for 2 to 3 weeks before I butcher it. Okay. And then I cryovac it. I'll pull it. I'll let it wet age for a week, pull it out, let it dry, bring it to room temperature. I will pat it down, get it dry. I'll coat it in simple yellow mustard. Just simple rub around with yellow mustard. And that's the foundation of how I start anything that I'm going to add. Any real red meat, I do a mustard kind of cover. Okay. So, then from there, I do a spice blend that is ground espresso, chili powder, dried mustard, garlic powder, onion powder, smoked chipotle, black pepper, salt, and that's it. Okay, pretty sure that's it. Blend that together. I coat that meat in it, cake it on really good on that mustard. And let it firm and dry up. And you'll actually see that seasoning kind of get wet. It'll start pulling itself into that mustard and into the meat just a little bit. Wait for that to happen. I grab a blackened skillet, olive oil, bring that skillet up to temperature, smoking olive oil, and I pan sear it in the skillet on all edges, ends, all the way around. And, you're talking a good chunk of bear loin, right? The nice, big, healthy cut. Okay. It can be long, it can be whatever, but you're talking 4 inches round and thick.
Okay.
So I sear that all the way around, and then I throw it in the oven, and I bring it to 145 to 148 degrees. Now, first thing you're going to say is, bear's got to be cooked to 160. Well, it will cook to 160, okay? But at 145, I pull that meat, and I pull it out, and I let it rest. While that's resting, then I crank up my Coca-Cola glaze, which is very simple. It's brown sugar, some lemon juice, some seasoning, and some Coca-Cola. Really, really simple and really a lively sauce. While that bear's resting, I've got a thermometer in it, and while over the course of 15 minutes, that bear is going to run right up to 160. Okay? And all it's got to do is make that mark in the center. Right? So as soon as it hits 160 resting, I slice it up. It'll be pink in the middle, nice medium. You think you shouldn't eat it, but it's all about the temperature. And that robust coffee glaze and that espresso and those couple flavors of chilies and the foundational flavors of your garlic and onion and your little bit in your mustard sets the platform for the most savory meat you've ever eaten. And bear is absolutely delicious. Now, coastal bear, not so much. But any inland bear will do you just fine on this recipe, right? Then a little bit of that Coca-Cola glaze over it, and you will find yourself the best balance of wild game flavor and the robust, savory blend of spices and that little bit of glaze to kind of set it all off. And it's absolutely amazing.
So question to you is, how would you put all this together? Like, how did you figure out this was going to taste good?
Well, the rub is something that I spent years kind of making. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, working on smoking pork loins and, just different red meats, pork, beef, things like that. And so applying it to wild game was a no-brainer, right? And long before coffee rubs became a thing, it was something that I loved. Now, it comes from when I was a young chef, I had a chef that I worked for, and he was trying to quit chewing. So he was grinding up espresso, and he was dipping grinds in his mouth. And one day he's like, "You got to try this, right?" And so I did, and I liked it. And I'm one of those guys, where in the grocery stores where they dispense their own beans, and there's tons of beans in the tray. Like, I'm the guy that goes by, lifts the tray out, grabs a handful, and I walk around the supermarket eating coffee beans like they're Raisinets. And so I've always had this passion for coffee being a flavor on top of my meat. Now, the Coca-Cola glaze is something that I came across with, people use Sprite, or they use different things as a marinade, or and different things. And so I just kind of thought to myself, I wanted to make a glaze, but I wanted it to kind of have a cool ring to it. So I was like, I can make a Coca-Cola, and I don't drink soda. Like, let's just get that out there. Like, I think soda's, if I'm going to tell you this recipe's great, but then I'm going to tell you that I think soda's kind of like poison.
It is.
But this Coca-Cola glaze is, if you're just going to have it once in a while, I don't think you're in any harm's way. But I think that it just works. And that caramelization of the soda, and I use the sugar kind, not the imitation or the diet or nothing. I just use real sugar cane soda. And you can use a brand of any kind, but just, something that's in that Coca-Cola family. And it just works out really good. And it's got that liveliness to the citrus, and the sweetness from the Coke, and a little bit of sugar, and a little more brown sugar to kind of round it out to make a good glaze. And a couple spices in there that'll just kind of set it up, and it just is great. I don't know, I just, as a chef, I experimented with a lot of stuff, Jeff. I've made stuff that I've eaten, and I was like, that's going in the trash. Like, that's awful. Yeah, right? And then every now and then you hit a home run, and I think that that's just something you got to think about when you're making stuff. Now, when it comes to your wild game that you've worked really hard for, that's hard to do, right? You don't want to make wild game that you're going to throw away because you made a sauce that sucks. So, try it on some hamburger, try it on some lower level meats, experiment in ways that aren't going to be as costly to you, right? I think that's just something that's super important. And I think that, I was going to see if I thought maybe I had that recipe. I was just thinking, I wondered if I had it. I'd taken pictures of that not that long ago, but I'll get them to you so that they're posted on there. But on the, and that compare with just about anything. Great root vegetables is what I like to put with it. Some turnips, some rutabagas, some beets, yams, just coating those in some olive oil, salt and pepper, a little bit of thyme, rosemary. I mean, you can kind of cheat with just like a sprinkle of Italian seasoning, and I think that's awesome. Parsnip mash. You can take parsnips and boil those down like you would potatoes. It takes a little bit more to cook them, and then I don't know if you're familiar with what a ricer is. It's a sieve that you basically, it's like, have you ever seen like the how people used to do flour through a mill to make it fluffy and whatnot? So a ricer is just a bigger pour, and it's kind of the same thing. It looks like a funnel to a degree, and you put potatoes or anything in it, and it's got a spinner, and it basically plows it through the holes, right? And it makes it kind of mashed, but finer. Okay. And so they call it a ricer. And there's a few different terms for it, but taking parsnips and running those through a ricer and making basically a parsnip mashed potato. Same concept, heavy cream, salt and pepper, a little garlic powder, and some butter, and blend it right in. You can always add a little cheese, if you want to kind of bring it to that route. Another cool thing is adding it to like cheesy grits, cooking out a bigger style grit, not the fine grit like cream of wheat, but a bigger grain of grit, and cooking those down and doing basically a simple cheese sauce in your grits is also awesome to go with that bear as well. That spice is so that coffee spice is so robust in a way that you got to put a pretty dominant feature with it, where anything cheesy, potato, starchy runs really well, and just a real earthy root vegetable does great with it as well. I hope I'm kind of going down the road that you were looking for.
Oh
here.
Yeah, this is beautiful, man. It's like it's just, I appreciate, like, you're the first actual professional chef I cook a lot too as well. I have usually every year I'll do, like, for actually the last 2 years I've started a tradition, because my home club here is like 30 minutes away here, and it's for the HGA shoot. So July, literally the same weekend as the Shell Montana one, I will be having on that Friday. I took the day off already because last couple of years I've worked from home, and then I've just kind of made all the meat and stuff like that. But I usually put together a massive meat buffet where I have smoked ribs, smoked chicken, grilled steak, and also backstrap. And then one year I even did smoked pike. It didn't turn out very well.
Yeah.
It didn't turn out very well because I had a lot of Y bones in it, but it's like I didn't bring it up to temperature, or it didn't get what I was looking for. It cooked, but it didn't deliver what I wanted to, so I didn't do it again. But I've been experimenting, and for all my years, I just really like cooking. Needless to say, now I want to move on to your caribou recipe. So now, this caribou that you created this recipe around, was this something that you had a chance to hunt at one point in time in your life?
A friend of mine, Mike Morrow, who used to help me produce my Wilderness Attitude podcast many years ago, actually was the one that was able to go up and harvest this caribou. And he gave me a bunch of it because he eats a lot of what he gets, but he knew that I would, do this shit up, and that I would, and that I would eat it. And I told him that I didn't have any. I was like, I really want to see what I can do with this stuff. And it was really important to me, some of the different cuts he gave me, but he gave me a bunch of sirloin. And, here I was looking at this meat, and I'd cooked a couple pieces of it. And it's a real sweet meat, in my opinion, with great game flavor, but doesn't hold a high level of moisture when you cook it. Okay. Zero fat. And it could take a bold flavor as well and do a great, and I don't know, I thought to myself, I had worked in a Mediterranean style restaurant for quite some time, and I had really liked what I had tried in some Oaxacan recipes. And so I just thought that would work, okay. that it could play. And so I just decided, okay, I'm going to try this recipe and we'll see how it shakes out. Basically an Oaxacan spice blend is primarily some of your same basics, right? You got your onion, your garlic powder, your dry mustard, your chili powders. But the big thing that changes this recipe is oregano, right? So a high level of oregano within your spice blend. And so it gives it that floral ability a little bit with the oregano. It gives it that oregano base, but you think it's going to be Italian to some degree, but it's not, because you're adding enough, red chili flavors in there, to really set the baseline tone for it. Now, okay. you could do the coffee blend recipe I give you, this all the same, but I kind of find that the coffee takes away the real abundance of the oregano part. Okay, so it turns into the Oaxacan spice blend. It's a wet rub. Okay, so It's not a dry rub. It's a wet rub. It's a marinade, if you will, that you're going to kind of throw this meat in, but it's thick enough that it'll adhere to the meat when you cook it. And so basically the Oaxacan style is to be cooked with onions and bell peppers. And then you can usually it's thrown over rice or just stuffed in a tortilla, so to speak. And so my play on it was throwing it on saffron rice. So I would cook white basmati rice. I would influence it with a little bit of paprika and olive oil, salt, pepper, and saffron. And so saffron just adds another floral element, obviously, which is what it is. The flavorful part is the threads that they pull out of the saffron flour.
Okay.
And it's also, it'll color they're orange, but in the end, they color your rice yellow. So if you've ever eaten seafood paella, it's the same thing. It's colored with saffron. Some people use food coloring and other things, but an authentic version is going to have tiny orange strings in it, if you will, from the saffron flowers. And now it's not cheap. Saffron, gosh, I haven't bought any saffron in a long time, but I mean, when I used to buy it by the ounce, it was $130 to $170 an ounce for saffron. And so it's a very delicate flavor, but as a foundational delicate floral flavor underneath an awesome spice blend and peppers and onions, it just sets that balance out that just is really, really delicious. And so as you can see, I like working with a lot of bold flavors in some meats, but I'm a fan of red chili powder of all kinds. Chipotle is my favorite chili there is. Another recipe that's kind of ringing to me that I think really plays really well, and it's one that I do in hunting camp. I chef in a couple hunting camps, and I do it. I do high end cooking in these camps, lamb chops and pork loin and ribeyes, and I don't do enchiladas and spaghetti and chili, and I'm doing single cuts of meat, veg, a great starch, polenta, something awesome. But I do serve a lot of sauces with everything I do. But a lot of dudes are like, well, I just want, just give me meat, salt, and pepper, right? And it's funny that even guys I have in camp, they're like, no problem. I'll give you salt and pepper, great steak, you'll love it. But here's a little sauce on the side. I want you to give her a shot. And typically, they're all into the sauce. So that's something that just kind of comes from my chefing background of just throwing that. I learned from some great sauciers, and that's where you got the value in your meal, right? You could, if you add a sauce to it, then you could add $5 more to the plate, even though you only got 50 cents of sauce on it, because it's just it's a professional element that ties the whole plate together. So another recipe that we do is I do pork loin in adobado. And adobado is a very simple recipe that is brown sugar, chili powder, lime juice, and garlic. And you take that and you make it into a paste. You rub it on just about anything, but I think it pairs really well with a white meat like pork, a chicken, even frog legs, if you will. It goes well with. Or gator is another thing it goes well with. So I think that, and that's something you got to rub it in it. You got to marinate it. It gets a little goopy. It starts kind of pasty, but gets watered out because it kind of sucks some of the water out of the meat and then it takes the flavor in. And it's something that you want to grill, because when you grill it, it brings the caramelization out of that sugar and that chili powder. And it makes this crust, and even the burnt adobo is where it's at. Like, the grill marks, like it has a different, distinct flavor. It's almost like getting burnt tips off of brisket, right? It's like, it's tender, it's well cooked, but the flavor is phenomenal. So, and then I serve that with an apricot chutney, which is I take apricots and raisins and soak them in water overnight. Just cover them with that, and then you add a little bit more orange. You add some orange juice, some orange zest, lemon zest, a little bit of lime juice, some bell peppers, some jalapenos, all diced real fine, and throw it in and cook it down, and then a little bit of sugar. That kind of basically makes, like a chunky chutney is what we call it, right? And it's a nice, real springy, sweet, citrusy sauce with chunks of apricot and pepper and and raisin, and that paired with that charred adobado is just absolutely to die for. That's one of my all-time favorites. I actually learned that recipe. That's not my very own recipe. I learned that from a great chef back in the 90s. It is actually a dish that was taken to the James Beard Foundation in 1991 when the James Beard Foundation did a Southwest themed event. And even Bobby Flay was the appetizer at that event. And I didn't get to personally go hit that event, but I was working at the restaurant with Chef Marianne Baines when she went. And that's just an amazing dish. And she served it with a black bean chili. So you fan out that pork loin, and we served it medium rare. Pork is something that should be eaten medium rare or medium. There hasn't been cases of trichinosis and mass-produced pork in 70 years. I think people want to cook pork to death, and that's the worst thing you could do. So we'd fan that out, put a little bit of that chutney over the top. We'd serve it with black bean chili, which is really simple. I mean, you can, even kind of a ripped off version of that. You can buy just black beans in a can, strain them out, throw them in a pot, add some bell peppers, some jalapenos, some chili powder, garlic powder, onion powder, a little bit of fresh water, just to kind of cook it down, keep it nice and yummy. And then we used to serve it with crème fraîche, which is basically sour cream and buttermilk that you set out at room temp or a little bit warmer room temp in a bowl, and you just let it curdle. And it's kind of a soury sour cream, if you will. Like, I don't know. I mean, basically, if you whipped up buttermilk and sour cream together, it's the same flavor, but it just has a little bit more tinge to it, if you will. Okay. And not because it's bad, but just because the flavor.
Hey everyone, Jake with HHA. Super excited to introduce the Tetra and Tetra Max Rise. The Tetra Max and the Tetra Rise is our new 2-pin vertical bow sight that we're coming out with here for this year. So you'll notice a couple things on it. It's very similar to our single pin platform that we've had here over the last 25 years, and really similar to the other sights in the Tetra line. So what we basically did was we took our single pin technology and we merged that with some multi-pin technology. So the way we built our Tetra and Tetra Max Rise sights was we basically dropped the second pin in that vertical pin coming up from the bottom, and then we added a second indicator on the yardage wheel. So both of those are fixed. One really nice thing with this setup is you sight in at 20 and 60 with the top pin, and you don't have to worry about the second pin at all. That second pin and second indicator will automatically be on. So really nice feature there. The Tetra Rise and Tetra Max Rise are gonna come in 8 different frame options. So 4 in the Tetra Max Rise, 4 in the Tetra Rise. Both are gonna come in the fixed Hunter Edition frames. So the Tetra Hunter Edition frame, the Tetra Max Hunter Edition frame, as well as the Hoyt Picatinny mounts in both the Tetra Max and the Tetra Rise, as well as the long dovetail and then the short dovetail bar option that I have on the Matthews bridge lock system. So all the dovetail options within the Tetra and Tetra Max Rise are going to be compatible with Matthews bridge lock system. So within both of these product lines, you're going to get a lot of different options as far as which sight you want to go with. So you're gonna get your choice of a yellow or red second pin. Red is gonna be the standard second pin color, but you can choose to go with the yellow option as well. And then both will be available in either a 10 or a 19 thousandths pin. All scope housing sizes are 1 inch and 5/8, and we do have the same front end that we've had on the Tetra line since 2020 with the macro gain adjustments as well as your micro adjustments as well for windage. New on the Tetra Rise this year, you're going to notice that there is a new needle carrier. So this needle carrier obviously has the 2 indicators, but you will see that it is a red anodized needle carrier to really call out where your needles are at. On the Tetra and Tetra Max Rise, we'll be able to achieve longer distances. So we have built the longest tape sets that we've ever offered in our company's history. So guys are going to be able to get out to 120, 130, 140, 150, and in some situations even farther depending on your arrow setup. So just making sure that we're getting arrow clearance, but really nice feature to be able to just step out in the backyard or head out to the 3D course to shoot out to some of those longer distances. On the hunting side of things, this is one of the nicest hunting sites that we have ever built. It does have reasonable pin gap spacing with a 1/4 inch spacing. That way, you know, if that deer runs out from 20 to 35, your second pin's on. So the most commonly asked question that I've had so far as we went through this whole setup process is, where does that second pin sit? Well, that second pin is going to vary depending on the different arrow setups that you do shoot. Closest answer I could give you is the most common is going to be somewhere between 32 and 40 yards, depending on how fast your bow is. So you'll likely be somewhere between that 32 to 40 yards with that second pin if the first one's at 20. So along with all other HHA products, the Tetra Rise and the Tetra Max Rise carry a 100% lifetime warranty. All products are 100% made in the USA. For more information, you can visit our website at hhsports.com.
When they're given a little bit of time to ferment together, it creates its own flavor. But I just do a little bit of sour cream or a little bit of Asiago cheese is really killer on top of the black bean chili. Because that Asiago cheese has a little bit of a nutty flavor, and it's a dry cheddar. And so it's really nice on top of black beans too. So I can get your recipes on all this stuff for you to throw in, and you'll be stoked. You know, it gives you a nice crossover of, you know, being able to utilize these on any meat, really. I mean, like I mentioned, the Autobottle is great on white meat, but the Oaxacan spice blend that I use and the coffee rub that I use, you know, I use the coffee rub on a lot of stuff. Elk and deer. My kids love it. People really like it. It's a great versatile rub. I would suggest you buy all this stuff and blend it and have a tall container and make it a staple in your pantry, because once you try it, you'll love it. It's just awesome to have.
That's amazing, man. I appreciate the wealth of knowledge you provided us. And it's like, I almost kind of wish we had a camera on top of you watching you make all this stuff, because it just sounds so amazing, especially the saucier, the building, make the sauce for the coffee sauce. I mean, it just sounds amazing, and how you put everything all together, and the way the story comes together with it. Because it's like, I always find when a chef puts something together, I always find it's like it's telling us a story. It's like it's wandering through a land that you never experienced before, especially when you have this expertise like to share. I mean, this is just amazing. I appreciate the information.
Well, you're very welcome. And I mean, you know, at one point in time, I had some of this recorded. I put some of this stuff up through Wilderness Attitude a long time ago, but I couldn't tell you. I don't think I own any of it anymore. I couldn't even begin to look through what hard drive would even have it. But, you know, it's something I've always given a little thought of doing more of, to be honest. I mean, you know, last year when I was on the road with Mountain Archery Fest, I did a bunch of these recipes for my crew, and had a great time just kind of experimenting with that again and doing a few things. And it ended up leading me to chefing in this Coos Deer camp for Antler Canyon Outfitters. He gives me a hunt every year, and my way to kind of pay him back is like, look, let me come cook for the crew and the paid people you got coming and the giveaway person who won, so you don't have to pay a chef, you know, a couple grand. mean, you gave me a couple $1,000s worth of hunt. Let me come and do this for you. And
Yeah.
I went and did this last August and had a great time with him. And next thing I know, this fall, I'm going to go work for a big camp and kind of get back into my roots of cooking again. I stepped away from it for a really, really long time. It's been really 25 years, 27 years since I've been in a kitchen doing this. And but I had so much fun in camp, just kind of bringing my recipes. I mean, I've got 3-ring binders full of recipes from my career. I think I have 3 of them total, 3-inch binders full of recipes, that were either given to me or I acquired from kitchens or stuff that I've done myself. And, I mean, at this point in time, I've been in 5 published cookbooks at this point.
Wow. That's quite a reputation right there.
Well, you got a good reputation when you put your own out. That's what I say. Like when you can finally put one out that's got, a collective body of work from just yourself, then you've reached that point.
Okay.
But for me, humbly speaking, like I really enjoy cooking, and I think people should really embrace it and really try to experiment. There's lots of great cookbooks out there that even I've learned from, like making my bear brats. I got a charcuterie book that I learned stuff from. Even Stephen Ranella had a book that he had out. I took a recipe out of this charcuterie book and a blend of his recipe, and I blended it together, and then I started adding cream to my brats and doing some different things like that from what I'd learned from a chef before, and kind of created my own bear brat. And man, they're amazing. Like they're to die for, and I don't make that many of them. So it's like anytime anybody gets wind that I'm making bear brats, it's like knock knock. Remember me? I want some bear brats. And but yeah, I'd love to do this again and come on with a few more specifics. You kind of hit me up with this today, and I'm halfway across the country. I don't have any of my stuff with me, or I'd just be able to hold up the recipe for you to see on the camera.
I didn't know you didn't get the email until literally today, because I sent it the day you and I talked. I sent it, but it's like for some odd reason, I don't know what's with these filters, but they always send Zoom calls to the spam filters. I should have followed up with you. Hey, did you get my email? And double check your spam filters. Almost need to put that as a precursor when I'm texting somebody to set it all up. But that's my fault. Because otherwise, you would have been prepped. Because we set this up back in February 3rd, so it's like yeah.
Yeah, I totally missed it. And then it was like I knew we were going on today, and then we were on Instagram, and you're like, hey. And I was like, hey, I assumed you'd have sent me an invite by now, right? And I was like, did you send me an invite? You're like, yeah, a long time ago. I was like, holy crap. But no, I'd love to do it again sometime. I've got a ton of this I'd love to offer to your listeners, man. I love when people cook for themselves. I love seeing people do something better. I mean, I was even talking with Jay Carville the other day about from First Form Outdoors. He put this story up, and he took deer loins, and he literally cut these beautiful steaks out of this deer loin, and then he butterflied every single one of them to cook. And I was all, what are you doing, man? Like, why would you butterfly them? And he's like, well, that's how my grandpa taught me to do it. And I'm like, no, man, no, don't do that, dude. I'm like, look, cut them in 1.5 inch medallions, cook each side for this long, throw it in the oven for this long, let it rest for this long. You're going to pull it out. It's going to be medium rare. It's going to be delicious. It's going to be juicy. I'm like, good Lord, why would you take the most fine cut and butcher it down to where it's, like a thin pork chop? I'm like, oh. And so I love giving the information. That's all. I love cooking. And I'm super stoked for me that I kind of got back in the camp, because it's reinvigorated me to kind of bring that out. And I quit doing the shot cotton trap barbecue in 2017. That was our last year we did it, and I really kind of miss it. We do everything mountain lion. We do, it just didn't matter. I even had a guy offer me a horse that was dying. It just didn't come together. But, every year I used to do like a surprise meet. and not label it in my spread, and people would try it. I think mountain lion was the one that caught everybody off guard, man. Like when I threw some mountain lion out there, I actually had Jacob's grandpa made a recipe that was it's called Chicos, and basically you take a dried sausage, dried beans, dried corn, everything's dried, and you basically just throw it in a pot, fill it with water, and you cook it real slow for a couple days, and that's all there is to it. And then you season it just a little bit at the end before you serve it. And it was mountain lion sausage, and we served that up, and dude, that was so good. Dude, that crock pot was emptied, man. I mean, like, it got scarfed down as the mystery meat, and then at the end, people were asking, what was in the crock pot? What was in the crock pot? And I tell them that it was mountain lion sausage, and they're like, I ate kitty cat? Holy crap. You know, I mean, and there was I converted a lot of people in that event we used to do, vegans who really, they would even tell me, they're like, you know what, I don't eat meat the rest of the year, but when I come here, I eat everything you make because it's delicious, but it's just not where I sit. But it really opened their eyes to the fact that, like, some of them started hunting, some of them started appreciating, you know, where we were coming from and what we were doing. And then a lot of people got to learn how to cook wild game a little bit better, because a lot of people just want to cook it to death, or they don't want to care for it properly in the beginning. I mean, I just can't tell everybody how important that piece is. You know, when I trim my meat, dude, I take everything off of it, all the silver, all that sinew, all that joint stuff, all the fat. Like, none of that gets wrapped in my stuff. And I could even do a whole nother segment and tape it for you, where how I think people should wrap their meat. Like, you know, there's a certain way that I wrap my meat. I double wrap it in plastic, and I single wrap it in butcher. And okay, I can pull meat out 4 years later, no problem. 5 years later, no problem. It is good to go. And I did that last year for my guys on the road. I had a piece that was from 18, a piece that was from 20, and a piece that was from 22. All elk roasts, and you put them right next to each other. And I'm like, can you tell me which one of these are from 17 and which one's from 22? And you can't tell.
Nice. So what's your thoughts on vacuum sealing wild game?
So I like vacuum sealing. I think it's a good thing to do. I don't think it's the complete protective package. I think if you vacuum seal, it's something that you should eat sooner than later. But a lot of people think you vacuum seal, it could last longer. But I think there needs to be more element in between the meat and the outside. So, like, the way I wrap things, for the most part, double wrapping it, you basically have 8 to 10 layers of saran wrap around every part of that meat. And then the way I butcher paper, you've got 2 more layers of butcher paper around the whole thing. So you basically got a solid 10 layers of wrap around that meat. Now, I do, you know, and I could be disputed on that. People could bring out science and facts or whatever. That's just how I feel. Mm-hmm. Now, my hamburger grind, I do in vacuum seal every time. And that's because I'll do a pound, pound and a half, or 2 pounds, because I had a big family, so everything was a 2-pound pack, right? So,
true.
And I lay it long, and I make it flat. I make it as flat as that, right? And then I got these great little baskets that go in, and they basically they stack in there nice and easy in these little baskets. And then when you want to thaw that hamburger, dude, you just throw it in cold water, and it's thawed in 8, 10, 15 minutes max. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's ready to go. You know, but when you got a block of burger this big, you know, it's been pumped in a single plastic bag, like, that stuff that stuff's so thin that you catch it anywhere on a rack in your freezer or whatever, or even if it falls out on the ground in your shop on the concrete, it opens the plastic, right? And I just think those big old logs of ground beef is a pain in the ass. Mm-hmm. So for me, making it flat, and man, it stacks well, and it thaws really fast, and it's that go-to protein for the family on the go.
Yep, I do the exact same thing. I make it real thin, and it's easier to stack and easier to go through it because like we all know like, what the prices and everything being so expensive. So when my wife and I go out and buy stuff, or when it comes on sale, like I bought 40 pounds of chicken just because I can't beat $5 for a quarter, and I can do a lot of things with that piece of meat, like from smoking it to brining it to throwing in the sous vide. I mean, and just getting it for $5 for 10 pounds. You can't. You got to take advantage of those opportunities. We'll put it in vacuum seal bags, but it's something that's not going to be held for a long period of time. So we'll eat all this through the next several months between the venison in my freezer, the beef, and whatever else I decide to procure.
Yeah, and most of the meat that I get from the butcher, even, when I take a cow and get it done, I ask them to do my beef that way.
I'm Jake with HHA Sports, and today we're going to talk a little bit about our dovetail sights and how they're going to fit on the new Mathews V3X. So as you'll see, I have a Tetra Max Tournament Edition sight on this 33-inch V3X. All of our dovetail sights, the Tetra and the Tetra Max, will fit on the V3X. Also, in the next couple of weeks, you'll see us come out with a shorter dovetail version. It'll just be our short bar version, which will also fit on the V3X on both the 29 and 33-inch model. One question that we've gotten pretty frequently lately is the windage adjustments on your Tetra and Tetra Max bow sights on the new Mathews bow. And this year we came out with the infinite adjust plate, which you'll see on the front end of your sight. So when you put this infinite adjust plate on, you'll want to either flip it to the inside or the outside. And for the inline mounting sight options, such as the V3X, you're going to want to make sure that the infinite adjust plate is to the outside of your infinite adjust channel. This will allow for optimal windage adjustments. So you'll also be able to find the infinite adjust bracket on our website if you're already shooting a Tetra or Tetra Max Tournament Edition sight. Another way that you can get your HHA to fit V3X is by buying our conversion kit, which you can find on our website at hhasports.com. We'll be selling those at retail around $60. So basically the only thing you'll have to do is you'll have to take apart your sight at the third access point, and you can convert any Tetra or Tetra Max sight. So if you have a fixed frame, you can get that into a dovetail. So like mentioned before, any dovetail sight will fit a Tetra or a Tetra Max, as well as our short bar version. For more information, you can visit our website at www.hhasports.com.
It costs me more money, but I don't care. Sometimes that convenience is totally worth it. Makes it easier on the wife and even the kids if they want to just, throw burgers together. Because when you're trying to teach your kids how to eat healthier, it's got to be easier. It's got to be fast. And so that is just a key thing that for me works. But yeah, buying bulk meat and throwing it in vacuum seal is killer. And I use vacuum sealing for those simple reasons, but I also use it even when I thaw meat. So if I want to do a marinade that's more of a vinegar based or a liquid base or something like that, I throw it in the bag, throw the meat in the bag, and I vacuum seal it. And when it does that, man, it pulls that right in the meat. You can marinate something for a couple hours instead of overnight if you use your vacuum sealer to help you accomplish that. Poke some holes in the meat and the chicken just a little bit, just give it an opportunity to introduce. And it's a game changer. Like, even like your brining, you can brine in a vacuum seal and it's just way faster as well.
Oh,
and then you just take it. And then you just take it right out of the fridge and drop it right in your sous vide, just like that, and cook it right in the marinade in the sous vide, pull it out, mark it up, bring it up, boom, on the plate, it's money.
For sure, man. I like doing it for brines. I mean, I had a neck meat off of a massive buck I shot a couple of years ago, and I just put used a Worcestershire based as one of the main ingredients and with soy sauce and a barbecue sauce and a bunch of spices, threw it all in there, and I let it marinate for 12 hours or so, and it was just so delicious. The flavor got into the neck meat so well. And neck meat is such an underrated cut of meat, especially if you do low and slow. Oh, I fed at least I fed 9 people off of that one piece of meat.
Oh yeah, and when you do it like that, it just melts in your mouth. Oh, I mean, it is tender meat. You just got to work through a lot of that connective tissue, right? And that's part of your meat care in the beginning. If you're doing it right from the get-go, then it's not that tough, gristly side of the animal. It's awesome. I mean, killer chili meat, great for taco meat. Mm-hmm. It goes a long way. Making chili, I mean, it's one of my favorite cuts. So many people leave neck meat out there and rib meat. And, so many people leave so much meat on the bone because they just have this perception that it's not any good. But all of it is usable. It's all just in how you do it. Like even when I would butcher deer and elk for some people, like I understand the cuts. I know the name of each cut. I know the best way to cook that cut. And so I would take a certain steak and put it on there. And I'd be like, okay, how do you want it packaged for you? For 2 people, 4 people? And I'd package it like that. And I'd actually put it on there. Cook it fajita style, right? This is stew meat. This is hamburger. Grill these steaks. Pan sear this, put it in the oven. Make a quick roast out of it. Or this cut needs to go in the crock pot. You need to cook this thing for 10 hours and break it down into a great pot roast. I would literally write on the package how to cook it because otherwise they get to a point where they cook it and they're like, this sucks. And it's just because certain grains of the meat are longer strand, more compact strands, tighter, looser, and they all deserve to be treated a little bit differently. And most people just they can't conceptualize that. So you just got to kind of help them a little bit to understand. And even when I have someone sitting next to me, I like to teach people how to butcher their deer or their elk. I'll actually tell them, look, you never done this before? Great. Hang it in my meat locker. Come back on this day. Come back, and I'm going to walk you through it. I'll show you exactly how I do it, how I wrap it, what each cuts kind of mean, explain to them the different styles of the meats and how the best way to utilize it is.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And that I love doing that. I love teaching people how to do that because when they get to that point where then when they're cooking it, they're killing it, they're cleaning it, they're cooking it, they're seeing the end product, then they come full circle, and it also helps create that emotional connection. And that's where it's at,
That's the real trophy. It's not the horns, it's not the mount, that's the meat. And I got the privilege to teach my best friend and his dad and his brother how to break down meat because my buddy's dad's done really well in life, so we always had the butcher take care of everything for him. Well, now the butcher doesn't take care of it. They just can't do it. And so I got a chance to go there. I showed them how to break everything down, showed them how to pull the hide off and such, because they would just take them, gut them, throw them in the back of the truck, take it there, and they do it all themselves. So I showed them how to do all. Man, it was so much fun. And plus, the upset was I had the pick of the litter of the meat, so I picked this 35-inch long backstrap. I was like, this is my payment of putting in 20. I think it took us 12 hours per buck to break it all down because these things were not small. They're pretty big. I'll send you. I got a picture of them, but man, they were just so well eaten off of them. But it fed. I think those 2 deer probably fed at least 25 people between all the family members and such.
That's where it's at, and then I'm always trying to teach people to hang their meat longer too. I mean, I'll kill an elk. I'll take the loins, inners and outers, and I'll do those right away.
Yeah.
Right. Get them done. Put them away. I let my fronts go 2 weeks, except for the calves and the forearms. Right. I take those off right away. They just get cut up to go into grind. But then I take my fronts and I let them hang 2 weeks. I'll let rears hang a whole month. 41 degrees, less than 20% humidity for 30 days. And I mean, no mold on the outside. They'll dry cap about a little less than a 1/4 inch thick. So you'll lose a 1/4 inch of meat all the way around the outside. Mm-hmm. And this is bone in. Okay. So, and then I let them mold on the outside, not black mold, but it creates kind of a dry green mold, if you will. Mm-hmm. And then basically you're just, while it's hanging, I just carve that cap layers off. And then, dude, I'm down to the ruby red meat. And I mean, like, I'll try to find some pictures to send to you, because the flavor of that dry aged meat is incredible. And people think that's gross or this or that or whatever, but I'm telling you. And they're like, yeah, but you're wasting a lot of meat. No,
really.
Because all I do, I cut all that off, I throw it outside, the sun hits the cap, it kills all the mold, and my dogs eat it to death, and they love it. And it doesn't bother them one bit, okay? Not at all. They don't get the shits. Nothing happens to them. They don't get sick.
Good.
It works out great. So, and I just, people think, that you can't do that, and you can. And then even then, I can pull meat out after I've frozen it and let it sit in the fridge for another week. No problem. So, I mean, even Maurice last year, Maurice hung his rears because he forgot about them. We'll just be honest. He hung his rears for 2.5 months in the meat locker, and I'd even turned the meat locker off. Oh. But it was cold enough. I mean, my meat locker is a concrete room, 12-inch thick concrete walls with a simple man door, insulated man door, and I got a 3-fan industrial kitchen refrigeration unit inside. And but there's a certain point where the temperature was it was probably 41 degrees in there for about a month and 5 weeks. And then after that, it got cold. And then I shut it off. And the temperature was probably stayed below 40, probably more like 33, 32, right on the edge of freezing, probably more than likely for a good month. So it just stayed in that stasis where it wasn't getting worse. It was fine. I couldn't believe it when I walked in there, and I was like, oh, shit. And I grabbed a knife and cut, and I was like, wow. It's still good, man. That's crazy. Maybe lucky. I'm not recommending that one, but a solid month on rears will work no problem.
So is there anything we haven't covered that you want to say before we close out?
No, not really. I think we had a great conversation, and I look forward to maybe another opportunity to do this and bring some more of what I got to the table. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, me too, Brandon. I just like to shut up and just listen because that's just the best way to learn. And I'm looking forward to hopefully crossing paths with you at Beaver.
You will cross paths with me at Beaver. I'll be there. You'll be there. I think it's destiny.
Yes. I all I have to say is thank you to Ben from Sodak Horizon, because he's the one that kind of dropped this into my head here. And we were planning since Thanksgiving, like what event we're going to be able to hit, because my summers get busy with HUSA, and plus I travel between Minnesota and Iowa and Illinois, and I'll shoot these fun 3D shoots and such. And this year, Chris Ham is only doing 4 events, so it opened me up to be able to go out there. And I got 2 big fishing trips coming up to Okoboji, one in May, and then I turn around and go back there in October. And it's like, man, last October we caught easy, no BS, and at least almost 600 fish. Now keep in mind though, but this is between 9 guys, and we caught a lot of probably like itty bitty ones. Yellow bass is a big. They're unlimited, so it doesn't really matter. But that's what a lot of. But the nice thing is, all of us came home with a limit of crappies, which was pretty impressive. But man, it's
cool.
It's a complete stag party. The amount of BS that goes on, and like the amount of beer we drink, and the amount like we'll be filleting fish. Well, usually we have, let's see here, the 9 of us, we had 5 of us filleting, and then 4 of them were either getting us beer, or they're just pulling all the fillets and getting all dressed and clean. So we had one guy upstairs washing everything while all of us. So I'm out there filleting, and like part of my requisite to be even get invited to this trip was to be able to fillet fish. And my dad watched me fillet 89 fish in a matter of like 5 hours. I went through a 12-pack of Budweiser. I was feeling pretty at the end of that one, but 89 fish between the 3 of us, because my at the time it was my girlfriend, my wife. Man, it's like that's my bonding time with my dad. He turned 70 this year, and that's what we do. We spend a lot of time fishing. So this year, it will be the first year he wants me to drive the boats this way. Then he doesn't have to do it so much. He can spend all the time fishing, and I have to deal with everything.
Right.
But
Right.
it's like it's basically just like he's passing the torch because these guys have been getting together for almost 25 years, consistently doing a biannual trip. Anywhere between pre-pandemic, they had anywhere up to 17 to 20 guys. Post-pandemic, everybody realized how precious time was, and now it's like it's just like they cap it at 9 because all the other cabins are filled up.
Wow. Yeah, I tell you, that's awesome that they've continued that heritage, and it's awesome that he's passing down this captain torch to you, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked. I'm pretty stoked.
That's cool. That's pretty cool. Now, I'll tell you, I could use a lot of lessons in cooking when it comes to warm water fish. That's something that I don't have. Like, you talk about crappie, bass, stuff like that. Like, that's not my world. I've either fished salt or I have fished cold water, trout, that kind of thing. Even pike, we have a lot of pike where we live in some of our lakes, and it's just never been a fish that I've taken on to cook. So, I'll have to tune into some of your other episodes and see if I can learn a few things in that realm.
I'll tell you what, it's with your knowledge of making a Southwest coleslaw with pike, you won't regret it. You will not regret it. It's my favorite go-to. If I'm cooking pike for anybody for the first time, I'll actually bake the pike in a lemon pepper bath, and then I'll break it. Like, if it depends on how lazy I was when I was filleting the fish up. If there's wide bones, I'll break it. I'll do it like that, and I'll take my fingers and just get into it and break it all up and pull the wide bones out and put it. It's a little bit more TLC, but in the end, it's will deliver the same profile. But if I'm actually putting my time into it, I'll cut the 5 fillets off of it, and this way then it's just easier to eat that way. But man, it is a great way to introduce anybody to pike, and it's a very fun flavor because it's got that oil to it. It's got that high omega-3s. You can't go wrong with it, man. It's so much fun.
That sounds delicious. I'll have to hit you up for that recipe, man.
Definitely.
I'll have to give her a shot. And I like smoked fish too. Like you were saying, smoked pike. That sounded, when you said that got my attention.
Yeah, I did.
That sounds good.
I did it on a cedar plank, smoked it for about 2.5 hours, but I didn't let it get dry enough. I got it to where it was cooked, but what ended up happening was it was my first run with cooking for everybody, and nobody told me when they were going to arrive. So my idea was, because they were going to be showing up at 7, so my idea was to eat shortly thereafter, because a lot of these guys are either... One guy was coming from Texas, one guy was coming in from Philadelphia, and then some of them were local, but I didn't know their time frame when they're going to be there. So it's like, it was just kind of a guesstimation. But this year, I'm taking the whole day off, and I'm going to probably do that as well, because it's like I got caught a buffalo, big old sheephead. It was like probably, I think it weighed like 13 pounds. And all I was running with 30 yards of line on my 5'3" spinning reel, and that's it. So it's like we were just, all of a sudden someone kicked into it. I was yelling at my dad's like, you get that net. And so I'm just reeling it in, and all of a sudden I pull this big old thing up, and it's got this purple meat on the inside of it. And a lot of recipes on Pinterest were saying like smoke. It's like, all right, that is what I'm going to try. I'm gonna smoke it before I serve it to anybody else to see if I like it, because it's got big bones in it, so which is makes it good for smoking. That's why I don't know why people give carp such a bad name, because smoked carp is absolutely delicious, because you can actually get a pork-like texture from the meat after you brine it and after you smoke it. But it's like, you gotta be careful, because it's like I've had it too salty, so I like to go with like a little bit more of a sweet Jamaican jerk. So this way you get a nice wholesome flavor, but then you get a good spice.
Yeah, dude, that sounds delicious. You got my mouth watering, man. Sounds great. I have to figure out how to make it to your house for some fish one of these days, dude. That sounds delicious.
Oh, definitely. Usually when I do my podcast, it turns into a cooking event, because like it's depending on what time of year it is. I'll either cook you fish, or I'll cook you venison, or I'll cook you some other meat, and then we do the podcast live. And then if you are a whiskey drinker, beer drinker, or if you just like to drink water, it's a whole process of building the rapport with my guests.
Yeah, dude, that sounds amazing. Sounds like a great time.
Oh, it is. It's a blast.
I'll earn an invitation one of these days. I'll make you go over.
Oh, definitely. If you come, well, the nice thing is I'm literally right off I-90, so it's not hard to find me.
Sweet. I know where I-90 is. I've traveled almost the whole thing across this country. So.
Oh yes, I've been from both ends, and it's like you probably know how many times you cross the Lewis and Clark once you as you're going westbound.
It's a lot.
You ever count it?
No.
Okay.
How many times is it?
It's you cross it 17 times.
No shit.
All across I-90. Yep.
Well, I'll be down. I knew it was a lot, but I didn't think it was that much. I thought it was around 10 maybe.
No, it's I didn't know. I didn't believe it either until the guy I met when I was out hitchhiking back in 2008. He said, "We're going to be coming up across the Lewis and Clark River, and I want you to count how many times you go across it, and I'll tell you at the end if you were right."
I'll be down. That's pretty cool. You learn something every day.
Yeah, it's but at least once you get outside of Sioux Falls, or once you get on the outside of South Dakota, I-90 is beautiful. It's kind of like I-80 going through Nebraska. I-80 is just as boring. It's the worst part is when you hit Iowa and you go from 75, 80 all the way down to 65. It's like, what the fuck, Iowa? Get your shit together.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I've only really done I-80 going westbound, and I remember I picked up a Harley in Beloit, Wisconsin, a Road King that I bought, and I cruised down and I caught 80 and came across it, and it was like, dude, it was in August, and it was brutal, dude. It was like 100 degrees, 90 degrees, 90% humidity, like blowing through freaking stinky ass cornfields with the smell like manure. You'd hit a dip and think they'd get cooler. No, it got hotter. It was insane. And then we got in Nebraska, and it was tornadoes through the whole state, coming back, bombing underneath the overpasses, trucks getting flipped over from tornadoes. Then I finally got into my own state of Colorado, and it was beautiful. It was crazy. I'll never forget that ride. But anyway, I know that one far too well. I've done a lot of traveling back and forth on 80 and 90. Well, not one way on 80, both ways on 90. A ton on 70. I mean, had family that lived in North Carolina. Used to drive that back and forth all the time. And yeah, anything I've ever bought in my life, Jeff, a new car, a new rig, a new motorcycle, it was always back east. I always bought it back east and drove it back west. That was
I'm surprised you just didn't go south and go to Arizona or go into Texas to get something that hadn't touched salt.
Yeah, you're right. Because when I picked up rigs, I could always get good buys in the east, right? I mean, and I was always looking late model stuff because I didn't want EGRs and all that kind of stuff, and everything had to be heavy spec, and a lot more heavy spec gets sold on the other side of the Mississippi. There's not as much dual frame heavy spec stuff in the West because we out there, the tolls on these trucks, they run them heavy, they run them extra axles, they run as much load as they can because they get taxed on everything they do so much. So the payloads have to be that much greater to be able to afford to do it. Yeah. And in the West, we can just stretch things out, run less axles, and we can do it, and so we don't have to run this heavy spec stuff. So that's kind of what always led me to doing that. But a few pieces, but I did buy some new vehicles at back east that just how it worked out. I don't know. I always looked in. You never go to California for nothing, ever. Like, you just don't do that. I mean, because all the emissions control and just all the taxes and all that crap. I never did that. But anyway, we're completely chasing squirrels here. Anyway.
But anyways, thank you for coming on the podcast. I had a blast. May everybody check out the show notes. You'll be able to find the link to mountainarcheryfest.com, and I'll also be including these recipes once I get them. So everything will be ready for you for the weekend. So thank you for tuning in to another episode of Bucks America Podcast.